Hello everyone, a very good afternoon to all of you. I am Avichal from National Institute of Industrial Engineering. It is my honor to welcome all of you to the second edition of NITIE-P&G Equality Summit. Enthused by the response from the first summit, this year NITIE and P&G wishes to accelerate their shared mission for driving gender equality. Accordingly, the theme for this year is driving equality in supply chain, education and industry. Influencers from the government, corporate sector, media, and academia will share their insights and experience on gender equality in supply chain, debunk myths associated with women in supply chain careers, and discuss ways to collectively, as stakeholders, accelerate the pace of change. National Institute of Industrial Engineering Mumbai has been an active advocate on gender equality in the supply chain, and P&G aspires for a world where everyone sees equal and gets seemed equal, a world where every individual has equal opportunity to learn, grow, and succeed. We hope all of you got a chance to glance through various initiatives taken by P&G and NITIE in the past few years to build a more equal world for all of us. P&G, in association with NITIE Mumbai, is providing young minds a platform to showcase their equality quotient with Venus Equality Quiz. We have participation from 700 plus colleges across India and over 2500 students and professionals registering for the summit. This will be a fun-filled quiz event in which participants will have to answer 20 questions based upon various initiatives of NITIE and P&G towards equality, diversity and inclusion. The Venus Equality Quiz will take the participants on an interactive journey, and challenges in the quiz might include few brain teasers, photographic challenges and creative building. So, first things first, let us be well versed with the rules and regulations of the quiz. Firstly, the quiz is going to be an individual event. There will be 2 rounds and each round will consist of 10 questions. To attempt the quiz, you need to go to menti.com, which is menti.com, and put in the code, which is 72635312. I'll repeat, it is 72635312, and it is also visible on the screen. Alternatively, you can also scan the QR code flashing on the screen and it will redirect you to the website. You will be asked to join the quiz and will be assigned a random avatar. Enter your first name in capital letters followed by last 5 digits of your registered phone number without any space in between as your name when prompted. For example, if your name is Avichal Bhagat and your phone number is 9999912345, then you have to put Avichal12345, everything in caps and without any spaces while joining the quiz. Repeating this one more time, for example, if your name is Avichal Bhagat and your phone number is 9999912345, then you have to put Avichal12345, everything in capitals without any space while joining the quiz. The participants are required to be active on the Menti website for the entire duration of the summit. Questions will be displayed only on your personal devices on the Menti website and you need to answer them there itself. No questions will be displayed on the YouTube screen. Let me repeat again. The participants are required to be active on the Menti website for the entire duration of the summit. Questions will be displayed only on your personal devices on the Menti website and you need to answer them there itself. No questions will be displayed on YouTube screen. For each question, there is only one correct answer which needs to be selected from the multiple choice options. You will be getting 5 seconds to read the question and 35 seconds to answer it. So you will be getting 5 seconds to read the question and 35 seconds to answer it. The correct answers will get you points. The faster you answer the questions, the more points you get. Incorrect answer do not receive any point. So be ready for the fastest fingers first. When the voting is closed, the correct answer will be revealed and after every 3 to 4 questions, a leaderboard will be revealed. We have prizes worth more than 4 lakhs up for grabs. Top 30 participants will be getting the prizes as displayed on the screen and top 1000 participants will get either a Venus or Fusion razor delivered to their home if they complete the entire quiz. Again, please ensure that you stay connected to menti.com throughout the summit. So without any further ado, I request all of you to go to menti.com and wait for the further instructions. For the ones who have joined late, you can go to menti.com and put in the code visible on the screen. Alternatively, you can also scan the QR code. The format for submitting your name is your first name in capital letters and the last 5 digits of your registered phone number without any space in between. Come on, guys, show your enthusiasm. We have at 4 lakh up for grabs. So for the ones who have joined late, you can go to menti.com and put in the code visible on the screen. Alternatively, you can also scan the QR code. The format for submitting your name is your first name in capital letters and the last 5 digits of your registered phone number without any space in between. Participants, please, this is a live quiz and it will be started for all the participants simultaneously. Wow, we have many people joining the quiz. Please stay connected. We'll be starting the quiz in next 2 minutes. Best of luck to all the participants. I am sure it is going to be a mighty battle for the top prizes. Well, let's begin the quiz. So this brings us to the end of round one. It is a close competition between all the contestants, especially the top 100. We have a second round scheduled for you right after the panel discussions. So please continue to be connected on Menti. You can now see the leaderboard displayed on your personal devices. We have now a few videos for you to check. We'll shortly be starting with the opening remarks and fireside chat at 2 p.m. So please be connected. You can now go back to your YouTube video and enjoy the event.
pum, rip-pa-pa-pum-pum, ring-a-chicking-ding, ring-a-chicking-ding. किताब खुली खुल गए हैं ख्वाबों के भी विंग. कहानी सुनाई, मस्ती पढ़ाई, स्कूल ने शरारतों की चिड़िया उड़ाई.
हाँ बताओ आंसर.
जादुई दुनिया का हाथ जो छूटा, ख्वाब बनते बनते टक से दे टूटा.
विस्पर ने 4 करोड़ स्कूल गर्ल्स को पीरियड एजुकेशन और पैड्स दिए हैं. यू कैन जॉइन अस व्हेन यू चूज विस्पर अल्ट्रा. हम पैड्स डोनेट करेंगे टू कीप गर्ल्स इन स्कूल. विस्पर.
Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all to the NITIE-P&G Equality Summit. National Institute of Industrial Engineering, Mumbai has carved a long way in achieving great milestone in the world of supply chain and operations management. Beyond academics, NITIE is proud to have taken equality practice to a next stage by shaping emerging leaders in diverse backgrounds. At this mecca of supply chain, we go beyond the statistics, analytics, and operations. Cradled in the lap of nature, NITIE is a home to over 1,000 students, a birthplace of lifelong friendships, and a thought leader in celebrating diversity where everyone is welcomed, respected, encouraged, and loved. NITIE is proud of its inclusive culture that celebrates diversity and aims to ensure gender equality in all its initiatives. Therefore, to celebrate a climate of inclusion, to address and educate on the deeper unconscious biases and build an equitable structure, the National Institute of Advanced Engineering, NITIE, introduced its Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Cell recently with an aim to invoke and incubate inclusivity and diversity within all students and take a leap into making the workplace of tomorrow better. National Institute of Industrial Engineering, Mumbai has been an advocate on gender equality in supply chain as well. P&G aspires to build a world where everyone sees equality both inside and outside of P&G. At P&G, equality and inclusion is at the heart of everything. It has been advocating gender equality through its famous media campaigns on Airtel, such as #Sons Share the Load, Whisper, Sit Improper, and Gillette #Shaving Stereotypes. The company is also a pioneer when it comes to providing equal opportunities and world-class benefits to its employees to support them at all life stages and ensure a work-life integration. NITIE and P&G signed a memorandum of understanding to turn their common vision into action on the same. To drive action and inspire change in STEM and supply chain, NITIE, in partnership with P&G and USIBC, hosted the first NITIE-P&G Equality Summit in March 2021. The first session of the annual summit witnessed some distinguished personalities like Dr. Kiran Bedi, former Lieutenant Governor of Pondicherry, Ms. Anna Roy, Senior Advisor, NITI-Aayog, Mr. Madhusudan Gopalan, CEO and MD, P&G India Subcontinent. Now, we are proud to continue this initiative and bring to you all the second edition of Equality Summit. Today, we have leaders from industry and academia who deliberate on equality in supply chain and myths associated with women in supply chain and how collectively as stakeholders we can accelerate the change. I'm sure the summit will help us in achieving our goal of making a world that provides equal opportunities for all. Now, I'd like to introduce Mr. Madhusudan Gopalan, the current Managing Director of P&G India, to our eminent panelists. Madhusudan is a IIM Calcutta alumnus and began his career in sales with P&G in 1999. He previously worked with the P&G Walmart business team in Cincinnati and then as the head of market strategy and planning in India. Mr. Gopalan is a general management CPG professional with 19 years of experience in India, the United States, Indonesia, and Thailand, with exposure to entire spectrum of general management, including P&L management, listed entity management, board management, strategy development and execution, brand building, go-to-market channel, key customer management, cost and cash productivity programs, process re-engineering and execution, organization design, and leadership development. He has a good track record of exceeding expectations in market share improvement and also organizational turnaround. Mr. Gopalan has a fantastic organizational focus mixed with strong leadership that leads from the front, gives clear directives, assigns a sense of ownership, encourages high level of performance and ensures individual career development while achieving organization goals. Welcome, Mr. Gopalan, and over to you for the keynote address, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Professor Agarwal, for the very kind introduction. Very warm welcome to everybody who have joined us for this very illustrious summit. Special warm welcome to all the students who've taken time out to be with us here today. Warm welcome and greetings to Director Dr. Anuj Tiwari from the NITIE, Director NITIE. I'd also like to extend my welcome to my fellow keynote speakers, Dr. Arundhati Bhattacharya, who's CEO of Salesforce, and of course a very illustrious banker we all know, and of course a very warm welcome to Ms. Gargi Dasgupta, CTO for IBM, who's kindly consented to be with us here today as well. I'd like to first start, if we could go to the slide which shows equality and inclusion. Thank you. I'd like to first start by sharing with our audience today that, like NITIE, P&G has a very deep standing commitment to equality and inclusion. We've used the power of our brands, our leading brands in India, through advertising to be a force for good, to drive the message of equality and inclusion. Professor Agarwal did talk about Ariel, Share the Load, Gillette, Stereotypes, or Vicks Touch of Care. And there are many, many other examples, and we will soon show you one such example from Olay, which is hot off the press. But we believe that our brands, which reach millions and millions of our consumers in India, have also a responsibility, a responsible voice to shape the conversation on equality and inclusion. We've done a small bit in supporting of empowering marginalized girls through education. Our long-standing program on P&G Shiksha has made significant contributions in this area over more than a decade, and so has our brands such as Whisper, which is, as you saw in one of the earlier videos, made a huge contribution on educating on menstrual hygiene, which makes a huge impact for children to stay in school during that time of their study. We've also made a huge commitment to embrace gender equality within the P&G community in India, at every aspect of our operations, in particular with a sharp focus on STEM. Last but not the least, our efforts on creating an inclusive environment is not just focused on gender equality, but all aspects of equality. In particular, I'd like to share with you that we're very proud on the work that we've kicked off on creating an inclusive environment for our LGBTQ plus colleagues in India by extending all benefits to LGBTQ plus employees and their partners, and we will strive to continue to be a force for good and a voice and a responsible voice in this area as well. I'd like to now move to talk about the specific focus area for us within gender equality and share with you some of the we've made over the last plus. We've called out that we will continue to focus on educating infants and girls on puberty and hygiene, a commitment of reaching more than 2.5 crore girls. We've called out and fulfilled our commitment of spending more than 300 crores on supporting investments and businesses which are women-owned. We continue to strive to have equal representation behind the camera in the form of female directors for our advertisements. We made a commitment and we're making good progress towards meeting that commitment of supporting digital literacy and raising the technology capability of 10,000 plus women. There's a very unique partnership that we have in partnering with the government's NEEM mission, where we are supporting, offering opportunities for NEEM apprentices, specifically for women in our manufacturing facilities. And of course, in partnership with NITIE, we declared last year, and we will continue to focus in partnership with NITIE on how do we engage more than 150 colleges across the country to support and break some of the gender barriers in STEM. Moving forward. We will now show you a short video, our latest OLE campaign, which focuses specifically on how we can break some of the myths around STEM on gender equality. If you could play the video, please.
কি খুঁজছিস তোরা?
নর্থ স্টার।
নর্থ স্টার? ওরে বাবা, তুই তো বড় হয়ে অ্যাস্ট্রোনট হবি।
সত্যি?
হ্যাঁ।
আমি কি হব?
তুই হবি স্টার, বড় ফিল্ম স্টার।
একদম ঠিক বলেছিস, স্টার হবে।
आपके भाई या पापा कोई है?
बताओ क्या हुआ? वो भी आके मुझे ही बताएंगे।
राजू, दिस इज फैंटास्टिक वर्क। प्रिंसिपल मैडम को अच्छे से प्रेजेंट भी करना पड़ेगा। क्या बोलोगे?
This windmill is actually a model of a wind turbine and it's powered by a motor of this old toy car. And you know, we made this to emphasize that we must switch now to wind energy. How was the class today for you? It was so hard for me. Now we did.
പിന്നെ കഴിഞ്ഞ വർഷം പഠിക്കുന്നതാണ്. ये देखो क्या हाल बना था। वाह मिया, ये सब तुमने बनाया है?
सबकी बेटियां प्रिंसेसेस और फेरीज बन के आएंगी और उनके बीच में मेरी बेटी डस्टबिन कैप पहन के रोबोट बन के खड़ी रहेगी। कैसे लगेगा वो?
पापा मैं करूं? मुझे पता है मैं कुछ फॉनी पे हटूं।
गोएचन चिवन को तुम्हारे कपड़े गंदे हो जाएंगे अंदर से।
We strive to address these unconscious biases in a systemic manner across every level, be it at school, university, or workplace. Starting with school, as we just saw in the video, OLE will partner with school to support STEM scholarships for deserving from the marginalized crowns to be able to pursue their dreams on STEM. If you can go to the next slide, please. And starting from the school, We would like to then move to the university. If you could go to the next slide, please. And this needs no introduction for this group, the partnership that we with NITIE to be able to reach colleges to tackle bias so that we are able to move forward from the representation that we have on STEM courses at university to our workforce. Lastly, the workforce itself. What's the role that we can play to tackle unconscious biases at the workforce? And we'd like to start from within P&G of how we can presentation of genders in technology, in manufacturing. I'm very happy to share that we continue to make strong progress on that front. Moving forward. And hence we believe that these are very critical conversations to be had in every household in our country. And we believe that each of us have a role to play to trigger these conversations. But these should not stop at the level of conversation. These should be backed up by acts every one of us can do to further more equality and inclusion in every aspect of our lives. But to this discussion today on STEM and gender equality in STEM. I'd like to once again thank you for taking your time to be with us here today, and hopefully we will inspire you and lead you to your own conversations and your own acts on driving gender equality STEM. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Madhusudan, for sharing these key insights with us, and we are sure your vision will drive the culture of equality, equity and belongingness, not only in corporate India, but also in the society at large. And we so much look forward to making strides in creating an impact in these directions with mutual partnership. Looking forward to that. Thank you, Mr. Madhusudan, once again. Moving on, we are now delighted to have with us Rupali Mehra, who's going to be the moderator for the event today. To give you a brief introduction, Rupali is the founder of Content People AB, which is an impact communications company specializing in communication strategy, video storytelling campaigns, events, research and workshops. Her work has been recognized on national and international level. I now request Rupali to please step in and commence the fireside chat. Over to you, Rupali.
Thank you, Professor Pasner. Good afternoon, speakers, audience, and students. As Professor Pasner introduced me, my name is Rupali Mehra. I'm a communication strategist, a former television journalist, and founder of the communications and impact storytelling company called Content People. But moments like these, when the academia, professionals, and thought leaders get to connect with each other, are still far and few, especially when it comes to driving conversations around gender equality. All the more, it makes me so proud to be associated with the NITIE-P&G Equality Summit this year. What is also rare and valuable is the opportunity that we are getting here to gain insights from those who have taken the leadership mantle and are willing to share their journey with us in all honesty. It is, of course, my honor as a result to hear Mr. Madhusudan, and next, of course, to be introduced to Ms. Arundhati Bhattacharya as our first Fireside Chat speaker. We all have read about Arundhati Bhattacharya as the chairperson of SBI. She led the digital transformation of the largest public sector bank. And under her leadership, SBI went on to be voted as among the top 3 of India's best places to work in. And that is quite an incredible feat. Today, Arundhati Bhattacharya is the chairperson and the chief executive officer of Salesforce India. In her role, Arundhati oversees the growth of the company and plays an integral role in defining Salesforce's relationship with the ecosystem of customers, partners, and the community across India. Arundhati Bhattacharya, it is such a pleasure to be speaking with you. if I can begin with just a personal anecdote, my first conversation with you was a very, very brief one somewhere in the year 2019 at the lobby of a large company where you used to be a board member. And we were waiting at the lobby during a break, and I'm not sure if you remember, but you had asked me, why are there only bad news and sad stories in the news and in the media? Why doesn't the media report the positive news? Well, I hope these conversations and platforms like the NITIE and P&G Equality Summit and having you leaders, women as leaders, can take the space of providing the encouragement and positivity that we need. So thank you so much for joining us. I would also like to begin with a question which kind of will take you back to how it all started. You've had a 45-year-long career. You've been recognized among the world's most powerful women and find yourself in the world's 50 greatest leaders. Now, you were also the first woman chairman of SBI. How were your formative years and how did they help shape your journey?
I'll talk about that. Thank you very much, Pal, for the introduction. But there are two things that I was thinking as Mr. Madhusudan was going through his speech. Women's Day is coming up, right? So there are, these conversations that are happening across corporations. Many of them have requested me to come and join because, on the 8th itself, I couldn't give that many institutions time. So they've had these conversations earlier. What struck me most, because we're talking about equality, that's why I'm talking about this. What struck me most was the audience was entirely women. It's a Women's Day function, so the audience is entirely women. What kind of equality are we going to achieve if the men don't feel that this is also part of their agenda? And so, in fact, today morning I had one such interaction, and they were saying that next time we want you physically. I said, I'll come only if 50% of the hall is filled up by men as well. We will not achieve equality unless equality becomes an agenda across all our concerns, whether they be in school, in academics, in corporates. It must be an agenda that is understood to be very important for all. And there, to relate back to your question about my childhood, I'll narrate a childhood story, which I'm not too sure whether it's in the book or not. But, this was about a teacher who was teaching us civics, social sciences. And, she was talking about the fabric of society and what keeps that intact. And many of us, we were in a junior class at that time, couldn't really relate. So next day, she brought a very thin piece of cloth and had four of us sort of hold it tightly from four corners. And then she asked another child to take a sharp pencil and push it up from the center. So as he pushed it up from the center, it became like a tent. She said, keep pushing, keep pushing. And as it went higher, the fabric actually tore. Okay. So, and then, the concept of why we need to be inclusive. What does it mean to society when there is so much of exclusion and there is so little of inclusion? It's sort of, it is represented to you visually. That this is what happens to society if there is no equality, if there is no inclusion. Certain portions of the society, if they remain depressed, and certain portions, if they keep going higher and higher, then the social fabric itself gets destroyed. You cannot have balance in society, you cannot have the productivity in society that you want to see unless and until you achieve this equality agenda. In my growing up years, one thing was very clear. We were treated like we were two sisters and one brother. We were all treated absolutely equally. So, whether it be in the matter of toys, frankly, in those days, we didn't have enough money to have lots and lots of toys. But one thing my father always had money for was books. And he made sure that, the books were for both of us, both my brother and myself. And Similarly, there were a few things. For instance, in those days, there were a lot of hand-me-downs that used to come. Today's children don't see those days. But, pullovers of my brother, boots of my brother, I used to wear them. And I never had an objection to that. He was just 2 years older to me. So I never had a problem. The one thing that I used to have problems with were his set of textbooks, because he was just 2 years ahead. Most of the textbooks would remain the same by the time I went into the same class. And in a natural way, they used to come to me. I put my foot down as soon as I realized what was happening. And I told my father that, where books are concerned, school books are concerned, I want a new set. And my mother, obviously trying to manage the family finances, used to say it's such a waste of money. But my father stood firm and said that it's a right. She should have a new set of books, because he also knew that my brother used to dirty up the books like anything, like any other young boy. There would be splotches of tiffin and mud and whatever else on the books. Some of the pages would be torn. So, I just didn't want to do that. And he wanted me to sort of understand that studies are important, and it's important both for a boy and a girl. So, we were brought up in a far more equal kind of environment. When it was a matter of going to college, he put in as much effort for me as he would have for my brother. We never had an issue on these things, and therefore one thing that my mother used to tell me right from the beginning is, have an identity for yourself, create an identity. You should not be dependent on having an identity of either your father or your brother or your husband. You should have an identity for yourself, and for that, if you need a career, have a career. Have a proper career. And in fact, when I joined the first initially, and my mother had very little idea about what a banker does, so she told me that you really feel that you want to be a banker, you'll be counting notes all your life. So that's what the idea of a banker was. Thankfully, I didn't get swayed by that. Because I too really had very little idea of what a banker does. But having said that, at least I had this one thing very firmly in my mind, that I should be independent by the time I'm 21, and that I should also have a career. So thankfully I could do both, which has definitely, helped me in my life.
You raised a very important question, Arundhati. You did speak about the role of men as well when we are talking about bringing in equality in the truest sense. I'd like to explore a little more and probe a little more on that. How can organizations, how can we, even at the level of society, at the level of our workplace and beyond the workplace, what are the ways in including men in the conversation and in action, not just in the conversation? And my connected question to you would be that, what would be the role of mentors in facilitating this?
Well, I think, a few things are very simple to do actually, and which should be done. One of the things is to first of all create empathy. Like, what does a woman undergo, when she is taking a double role? And that, if it is not understood in an organization, it's very difficult to justify the fact that when she's away on maternity leave, she's not having a picnic. Okay, or when she is, carrying on the responsibility of looking after children who are going through all the coachings and the preparations for the joint entrance and things like that, that it's not her responsibility alone. And to start that very early, I think a paternity leave is very important. It enables the father to bond with the child and become far more responsible for the child. I was not too convinced about paternity leave myself, but having come into a very young organization where you allow 12 weeks of paternity leave, every time one of my colleagues take it and come back, they're over the moon. They actually love it. And the fact is, then they remain committed towards that side of taking care of the child as much as their spouses are. So I think that is one piece that we need to do. The other thing that we need to do is to ensure that when women are going away for these leaves, if necessary, they can continue to work. Because what happens otherwise, if you take leave for more than a year, you lose seniority. And you definitely don't want to come in again into the same organization where your peer group has gone up by a year and you are left a year behind. Not that you took it out of, because again, as I said, you just wanted a picnic, you took it out of compulsion. And this is something, after all, women are endowed with something that nobody else can do. That is, we can give birth. and we can bring up children. We create the next generation. We should not be punished for that. And there are lots of women, unless they're physically not keeping well, that even during maternity they can surely do a job. And remote working was not something that was, really believed in till the pandemic. The pandemic has proved us all wrong in the sense that productivity is not impaired by remoteness. Yes, if you keep them remote forever, then to some extent collaboration falls. But I went on to Salesforce in the midst of the pandemic, just 1 week after the first hard lockdown, and I didn't meet a single one of my colleagues, nor went to a single one of my workspace till 18 months down the line. Has that impaired productivity? I don't really think so. In fact, if you look at most parameters, they were all pointing upwards and they were all green. So I don't believe that, we should exclude women. We should allow those who cannot leave home because they need to attend to the child, but who can still work remotely to do that remote work. So we need to create those kinds of, enablers. Technology now provides us with those enablers. Why should we not use them? We need those enablers. The third thing I would say is give them help when they need the help. For instance, when a child is sick, you really need somebody to sit in with the child. So what in our company, what we do is in a particular period of time, we pay for childcare for 7 days. So there, in an emergency, there is paid childcare that comes in for 7 days, and you can still go to office and not feel guilty about leaving the child in the recovery phase all by themselves. So, there are very many enablers that we can talk about, but the fact of the matter is, more than anything else, what is required is empathy. And that empathy will come in when we find that men also take this on as an agenda. If you have a women's network in your office, make men the executive sponsors of it. That's the way of getting those mentors to understand what pains we go through so that they can put them in our place. Once you start putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, you understand the requirements and the pains of that person much better.
Fantastic, Arundhati. I think we do have a lot of men, I believe, and young boys as audiences hearing you. So I really hope that everyone, men, women, young boys and girls, are taking in what you have said. And I think the fact that you have brought in the question of agility of organizations in meeting the requirements of employees, men and women, parental leave, which can be for men and women, as well as childcare leave, which again can be for men and women, right? So these are very, very important factors that you are raising. And in fact, in your book, The Indomitable Working Woman's Notes on Work, Life and Leadership, you also talk about your personal challenges and how you managed to turn a lot of the challenges into opportunities. Is there one of some of your biggest challenges that you might like to share out here as well?
Well, one of course was the fact that my daughter needed special care, and that was a very big challenge. There were a few decisions that I took which I still don't know whether they're right or wrong, and will probably never know. For instance, when I was in New York, I decided, my child was still about 2 years old, I decided to send her back to India for a year because she was at that point of time getting looked after by my aunt, and my aunt was on a visitor's visa. I had got 3 extensions for her, couldn't get any more extensions without her actually returning to India, and I had to take the hard call of whether to put my child in a creche or to send her back with my aunt. Now again, I don't know whether I took the right decision by sending her back, because at that point I couldn't afford very great childcare in the US, where it is very costly. I could have afforded, another person sitting in for my aunt kind of thing. I didn't want to sort of expose her to it, or we could have all returned back, which again I didn't want to do, because this was a chance to really and truly develop myself in a very new and a very vibrant financial market. I didn't want that not to happen either. So I did take a call in between, and it was, some of the most tension-filled days that I had, for one whole year. I was on tenterhooks. But the fact of the matter is that, that's sometimes you make compromises, you take hard decisions, but once you've taken the decision, you have to live with it. You live with it all your life, you try and rationalize it, your heart says something, your head said something else, but you have to take what you believe is the best, and then, take own responsibility for it. As I'm telling you, I still don't know whether I did the right thing or not. But I will tell you another instance which is not in the book and which I've been talking about recently because it just I remembered it. One of these occasions when my daughter's birthday was there, I was supposed to return from a foreign trip just the day before. Unfortunately, the flight was through Hong Kong, and there was a storm approaching Hong Kong, as a result of which our flight got cancelled. And the next day, they said flights would be available the next day, and I still thought I could make it in time, but it was Chinese New Year. And I couldn't for the life of me, get a ticket in the morning. I tried and tried and tried, no way. So ultimately, they put us up in a hotel, and I got a ticket in the night so that I would be arriving in the morning of the day after my daughter's birthday. Now, that really sort of consumed me with a lot of guilt. And what I ended up doing was calling up two of my colleagues' spouses and requesting that they take her out in the morning and give her a good time, and telling my husband that you stand in for the little get-together she's having with her friends in the evening and make sure, that she has a good time. Of course, I went shopping, and she was into beadwork at that time, and I bought her the largest set of beads that I could find in the largest box possible. And I carried that with me. And if you ask her today whether she remembers the bead box, she does. She will tell you that was a great present. Whether she remembers I wasn't there on her birthday, she doesn't. Okay, she was about, I think, 6 years old at that time. So sometimes I think, we put unnecessary guilt on ourselves. Okay, we expect ourselves to perform to a standard which others are not expecting of you. So, for her, it was still a fun-filled birthday, being taken out by two aunties, whom she loved, and then having a party for her own. So she was quite okay with it. And she loved the bead box. She remembers it still. But she doesn't remember the fact that I wasn't there at that time. So, unnecessarily you keep sort of telling yourself this is not the right thing to do. Not required. Nobody is irreplaceable. Nobody. So I really believe in doing the right thing, but it doesn't always mean putting unnecessary, high standards on yourself and thereby sort of killing yourself with guilt. Not required. You can still do your own job, and believe me, as she grew older, I've asked her time and again whether I should give up my job. She never wanted me to give it up, and I could see that surreptitiously she would snip out my pictures when it came to in the papers and take it to the school to show to her friends. So she was proud of me. So to that extent, I think I've done, probably what I could do in my judgment the best. Everybody will take their own call. But I think we need to hang in there, all of us who are doing this, because otherwise how will we achieve that equality? It won't happen.
Arunati, these are such powerful words, really, and I think coming from you, it does give a lot of parents who are working parents, fathers and mothers, especially mothers, a lot of strength. Fantastic. I don't want to let you go, but just a very, very quick comment from you before I let you go. Something that the students of NITIE can carry with them as they leave the academic space and move to the corporate real world. Any words of advice that you'd like to share?
Well, one thing that I would like to tell the students is, and this is something again which I am trying to live in my own life, is that they are stepping out into a far more uncertain world than we stepped out in, a far more competitive world than we stepped out in. So they have to understand that learning is something that they can never stop doing. The moment you stop learning, you get a sell-by date, okay, and that cannot be changed. So you have to reinvent yourself over and over again. A lot of people, in fact, a lot of my friends have told me that at the age that I took up a job in the IT sector, having done a 40-year stint in the fin sector was something close to being crazy. They asked me, how on earth will you manage? You were managing a workforce that was 40 plus, and now you'll be managing a workforce that is minus 30. And in fact, I joke with my current colleagues that, you were minus 30. With me joining on, the average age has gone to 31. Okay? So the fact is, they used to ask me, how will you understand that language? What will you do? You don't know how to do any coding. What are you going to do over there? But the fact of the matter is there is no end to learning, and I'm having a lot of fun. In fact, my young colleagues, they're teaching me all the time, and I teach them from my experience what I can. I bring the customer's point of view to them. So, I'm the devil's advocate at the table at each of these deals, because I'm telling them this is what the customer is going to feel. This is what is going to be his expectation. This is where, you will not be able to meet, the standards that they are going to set you. Don't show them dreams that you cannot achieve. Always under promise and over deliver. So a lot of the things that I learned as a customer from being the other side of the table, I bring that lens in. And I'm sure that helps them because, invariably they come and ask. So to that extent, if I was not, in some way contributing, that wouldn't happen. So I think, we need to be very, very clear that there will be, for the students that are stepping out today, they will have multiple careers. First of all, they'll live longer, they'll live healthier. And the cycles in economy are becoming shorter. And it's not only economy, all cycles are becoming shorter. If you look at the climate cycle, if you look at the economic cycle, if you look at the stock market cycle, all cycles are becoming smaller and smaller. And I don't need to talk about technology cycles. The moment you get your cell phone, it's out of date. Okay. The next day there will be another version. So the fact is, these people will have to make learning a constant habit. It is a habit to keep learning, unlearning. Forget some of the things that you had learned. Forget that this is what got you to this place. This is the style of management that, got you success. Reinvent your management style depending upon what situation you're facing, what is the geography, what is the industry. Reinvent management styles. And remember always that you can learn from everybody. It doesn't have to be only your teachers. You have to actually absorb from the environment. My father used to sometimes tell me, that when you enter a new organization, be like a cockroach, pretend you're dead, so that, you hear a lot of conversation around you and you absorb it like a sponge, understand what it is. And when you start acting, you already have a whole lot of information within you. So, you have to understand these things as you go on, especially for a younger generation. They have to prepare for an uncertain world. That's the only thing that I would like to tell them. And I'm sure they are doing that. They're highly adaptable, far more than we were. And they are equipped for it. Biology equips you for it. They are far more, comfortable with the screens and with technology than we ever were. So obviously they're wired for it. But then they need to develop those capabilities and continue to be a learner throughout their lives.
Thank you so much, Arundhati Bhattacharya. Fantastic conversation. I personally enjoyed it, and I'm sure all these students and the audience has really enjoyed it as well. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Most welcome.
My next guest is someone who I could imagine sees poetry in numbers as much as she sees poetry in words. A leader who is deeply immersed in algorithms, while at the same time has the acumen to take strategic business decisions and shape the future of technology for all of us. She also features among the most powerful women in technology here in India and one of the most powerful women in Indian businesses. It is, of course, a pleasure to be joined today by Gargi Dasgupta, Director at IBM Research in India and the CTO of IBM India and South Asia. Welcome, Gargi.
Hi, Rupari. Thank you. Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity and thank you for the kind words.
Well, you have been involved in research and computing for several decades, and I would like to begin by asking you, how did you find your calling?
Calling? Yeah, I like that. Okay, so let me start by defining how I think of myself now, right, after about 20 years in the industry, in the tech industry. So first and foremost, I think of myself as a technologist, right, really wanting every time to play with a new toy and then get bored with it and sometimes and throw it away and relearn and unlearn and start playing with a new toy. So I'm a technologist. I'm also a great believer in equity, right, and in equalizing circumstances. And I'll give you how each of those things started. And finally, I think I'm a mom, right, and I think I have a story of what I've learned from my motherhood and what I really aspired for. So technology, when did my love for technology, I mean, if I go back, I'm barely out of my diapers, I'm going to school, and it's only later, many years later, when I look at these report cards, I realize, the teachers are saying, oh, she's very naughty, she's not going to sit at one place, she doesn't want to have her tiffin. But one thing she's good at counting. She loves her math classes. So that's the only class that I used to pay attention to. So I think from very early on, I loved the STEM subjects, or I was clever to realize that, maths, physics, and the sciences required more study time. And I could go play my heart out and still study and do well. So I think that was one big sign for me to continue to do that. And so maybe I was just, smarter and figured out that was what I wanted to do. A very small example on when I got passionate and when I started really understanding that not all people are born equal and not everyone has equal opportunities, and that's what kind of then goes in a path and defines them and tells them who they are. So in my house, we used to have a nanny, and her granddaughter used to come. She used to go to school. She was the same age, so we used to have playtime together. And one incident I remember, I was really upset at her, and I was just thinking that she was being playful because she was not able to do subtraction, right? And we were in the same age, and she was going to school. And I said, well, are they not doing this in school with you? And she said, I go to school for 2 hours and then I come back and then I have to help mom cook and then I have to take care of my younger sisters. And so I don't think the study thing is really for me. And that's when I was 6 years old, and it struck me that everyone doesn't have the luxury that I'm born with, right? My parents, my family completely invested in me. So that's the difference between me and Meena. It's not that, I have some IQ that is much higher than what she has. It's just her opportunities limits who she is. And I think from that time, I worked with children at the Mother Teresa camps. Mother Teresa was still alive, and of course I've made that a part of me. Everywhere I go, any role I play, I always try to reach out and see what can I do to normalize. It's a really small thing, but for me equity is the most important thing. And when I gave birth to I have 2 boys, right? To me, the most important thing when I helped them was that I want them to grow up in a world where they are champions of equity as much as I am. So I think that's what defines me. That's what I prioritize day in and day out, every hour. And that's what you can call is when I found my calling and in each of these roles that I play.
Well, that's really fantastic. And what really interests me, and I think I would like to highlight that about you, is that you've continued with that journey despite being a part of parenthood. You have actually continued with that journey. Now, while the gender ratio of the girls studying in STEM fields, including women in computer sciences, is roughly about 35 to 45%. Not many women actually continue their STEM field as a profession. And this is something that is talked about a lot over the years, but we've not really managed to move the needle so much. Now, several women also drop mid-career, say after, say, 8 or 10 years. How can we bridge that gap really from having a large funnel of women who are in STEM fields, carrying that funnel into the workspace and ensuring that it also then leads to the leadership space?
Yeah, all right. So I think very important question. And by the way, I wanted to start by saying thank you to NITIE and P&G for all the wonderful mandates that you're driving. I mean, NITIE for really engulfing this idea of equality and diversity and inclusion and taking it to this level, and P&G for the wonderful ads, because I think that's what creates perception. And when we talk, you'll see I'm a big believer in how we change perception and how we undo the years of social conditioning that women have gone through. But yeah, for numbers, right? So you're right. So from an India perspective, we are at 14% of science and engineering women representation, right? It's almost dismal compared to a world that we want to be, which is 50%, right? 50% men and women in the world, we should be at 50% in every field. So in STEM, we are 14. The global numbers are at 28, and they are low too, right? So there is a systemic problem, right, as to why women are not at 50% in STEM. But in India, we are at 14% representation. But we don't start out that low. I think that's the bit that worries me the most. Engineering and the sciences are quite a looked up to career in India, right? So we start out at ratios that look more like 40%. In fact, if I take out the IITs, they can even be, as much as, 45, 46%, which is a great advantage that we have over the world. From there to the C-suite, right? I mean, and even if I don't take C-suite is what, 10, 12%, but senior management, right? Or leadership positions where you can take autonomous decisions. The drop is from 40% to 14%. And to me, that is the worry, right? Why is this? We are doing well enough in getting people interested in STEM careers, right? I don't think we have the perception that, engineering is nerdy and, I'm not going to be cool if I do engineering. And maybe there's a little of that, and we can actually fix that a lot through our programs on coding, on how making and building and innovation is everywhere. It's a drop, right? So what happens in India from when you start engineering to when you persist in a job and can work your way up to a leadership decision? There are two big things that happen, right? You join the workforce, you get married, and you have kids. And somehow, something in the way we've been conditioned, in what we take upon ourselves, in what we tell ourselves is right and wrong and is okay, and what the world tells us, there is this huge leaky bucket, right? So, and I think there's everyone to blame, right? Obviously, workplaces need more support, and they have programs, and there's a lot that they do. But still, the progress, like you say, is very, very slow. So I think it has a lot to do with how we look at women, how the share of responsibilities is really divided. If you see women in workplace report, even in 2021, senior vice presidents are saying, I should have taken up a much less intensive job. I have never heard a man say that, never. So even at that level, it's not just underrepresented, it's not just communities where they don't have the financial, it's even at the highest strata, the responsibilities are completely skewed. And we need to fix that, right? We need really partners, allies, coaches, mentors, in whatever model we can get in to take responsibility and not put this skew on women. And of course, then there's child, and Arundhati talked about that. That I think is a huge task and needs to be respected, needs to be, really given the time off, but also make it easier for them to come back after they take on that big responsibility. So yeah, two things I think to do to stop the leak: change perception, education everywhere, and then also teach the women that, sometimes it's okay to do good enough and not be perfect. You don't have to master every little thing that's going on at home, and prioritize a couple of things and go after them.
So I was going to ask you, how do we fix the imbalance? But I think you've answered that. Is there something else you want to add to that? Maybe a personal anecdote or something that would give us a good example of what can really be done?
Yeah. Let me see. In terms of actions, right? I think you asked me two questions: a personal anecdote, and I'll tell you a story. So I used to, this was mid-career, right? I used to have to travel a lot, okay, international travels, and my younger one was less than 2 years, so still needs a lot of love and attention. So it was bad enough that I would travel and be filled with guilt, but that's still my personal journey. I really didn't want to talk about it or make a big deal. I knew I had to be there. So I was in this international lab. We have research labs all over the world. I was there. We were getting into a business meeting. Me and my colleague had traveled from India. So I have someone welcome me, and he's seen me probably the 2 weeks back and maybe a month before. So he sees me enough times, and so he welcomed my colleague and said, "Welcome back, hope your jet lag is not too bad." And then he turned to me and said, "Welcome, Gargi. Your family, your kids must be really hating you for traveling." And to me, he was judging me. He was judging me there at that point because I was a woman, I was living off a suitcase, I was traveling. And so that's a personal story where I felt, did I not feel bad? I did, but I was there 2 years there, and I said, "Alan, yes, before you ask me, I'm going to tell you, they're absolutely fine and they love the Legos I take back." So it's one way for me to deal with it. I'm sure everyone would have a different way, but there's, and we think it's, it's our mothers and mother-in-laws and who pull us down. That's not true. Everyone will judge. Till we change conditioning, everyone will. So you have to find your own battles and, find your own ways to survive. Yeah, the other is interesting. The other story is that, when I was in a leadership position and we were promoting people, and by the way, the India statistics are for every 100 men we promote if you look at the same population of women, we promote 70 women. Okay, so that's where it is, and obviously it needs to become better, but that's what. So we were promoting, and we were obviously making sure that we promote for meritocracy, and of course, inclusion was on our mind. So I had a young woman who knocked at my door and who said, so that day, I think we were announcing 30 people who got promoted. Okay. The young woman said, came in and said that, well, is this really something because you're focused on inclusion, or is this what I deserve? So I had a long chat with her, and I said, these are the things, and this is how you should look at it, and you should grab the opportunity and really run with it. And then I told her, 29, no one, not even one man has come to my office and asked me that. So also stop feeling the imposter syndrome. It's not right. You have to believe in yourself and move on. So we also do ourselves a disservice, I believe, but so what can be done? I think, like P&G says, right, write programs at school. And when at school, it means teach the girls, but also educate the brothers, the parents, and the teachers. I think that whole ecosystem, because they are going to lift the girl child.
Yes.
Colleges, I think the same thing. And I think workplaces are already doing a good job. You just need to pull in more men, pull in allies, like Arundhati was talking about, right? No more manuals. It's a point of view on a financial state of the industry, on the IT sector, on supply chain, whatever. Don't put token women, really do your groundwork, look for breadth, put out role models. And the more you show role models, the more P&G shows ads like they did, I think it will change perception. I think we in the media, entertainment, communications industry have a big role to play.
Well, absolutely, Gargi. In fact, we are going to be showcasing a lot of the films throughout this summit as well. I'm going to stretch the question about biases from a personal level and a workplace level into coding. Now, as director of IBM Research in India and a CTO, you're also responsible for establishing and executing the technical agenda of IBM's India Research Lab. Now, there has been so much of debate internationally as well as in India on who designs, who codes, who builds for whom and for the future, right? So typically when one speaks of building anything, whether it is cars or bikes or trucks, which have been built for generations now, it's the men that is kept in mind as the end user. My question to you is twofold. One is that can code have gender biases? And two, is there a conscious effort being made to ensure that code and technology of the future are not gender biased?
Yeah, very important and deep question. So I'll answer it in two parts. And I'll break you down, right? Can algorithms that are built on today's historical data have gender bias? Absolutely yes, right? If I had an image recognition algorithm that took the image from our history books or from our social science books and bio books, and we would have to predict the profession of that person, I would have gender bias. I would look at a man and suggest, okay, you can be an engineer, you can be a scientist, you can be a doctor, and I would look at a woman and say you can be a nurse, you could be a teacher, right? So do algorithms have inherent biases? Absolutely yes, right? But the good thing is that scientists over the world, right, through all the mishappenings and how we recognized an African American woman who's not so much on social media, and we thought we misclassified it into an animal. For all the mistakes that technology has made, scientists are very careful. So today we have a gender, and not gender bias, but actually any kind of data bias detection algorithms in place. So I wouldn't say we are foolproof, but we have it in our conscious thinking, right? The first line of code we write, I think we think about that. So there is a way out of that. The thing that you talked about is professions, right? Like coding, which is going to take over the world. And are men better coders than that? I absolutely think not. Just expose the girls, just expose them early enough. Just make video games which is not all about killing and weapons, but interesting and, stimulates the brain, might stimulate the girls, like, making a hair dryer, doing an engineering exercise. So we just have to get creative, get them interested all the way from class 6 upwards. And I think coding is liberation for me, right? You write a piece of code, it does something. I don't think there needs to be a gender bias there. So yes, algorithms and mathematical models could have gender bias if you're not careful, and if we only imagine the historical data to predict the future. So we have to be careful about that. And then coding as a profession, I think we should just get more of our girls hands-on onto it, and I'm pretty sure they'll do a great job.
And we are, of course, looking forward for directions from leaders like you, Gargi, who are paving the way and really making a mark on what women can do with technology, with algorithm. And like I said, perhaps for you, algorithms is like writing poetry. So numbers and algorithms is akin perhaps to poetry. Thank you so much for joining us for this fireside chat. And it was indeed a real pleasure to be speaking with you. We will be playing one of the films right now by P&G that Gargi has referred to also about bringing in gender equality through perception. Take a look.
When we think about a transgender, we feel like they are cross-dressers, just dancing or, more into attention seeking. We can hardly picture them as a pilot or a doctor. I wanted to change this and live my life on my terms. I was fed up with all the mockeries and bullying around me. I started to hide my gender identity, and when I reached college, nobody identified me as a transgender. At a point, I thought like, why should I care about society? I need to live as myself. The greatest challenge I faced during the transition is that is from deep inside myself, not from the outside world. I was living as a boy for almost 30 years. A male is more privileged in our society than a female. In a family also, roles are given as per the gender. Conditions of transgenders are definitely worse. So everything needs to change. Changes will have to start from families. If a family accepts a kid who is a trans, definitely that kid could grow up as a better citizen. The best example is myself.
Well, that's such a heartwarming film and such a powerful one at that. And moving on now, institutions of learning are our founding ground that impart knowledge. It also helps us in our professional life. Importantly, institutions of learning shape the way we think, our outlook to life. They are also excellent grounds to explore ourselves, look within ourselves, look outward, explore our own attitudes, our perceptions, our biases, and the way we engage with other people. How do we treat others? Are we empathetic enough? Are we unbiased? Are we unjudgmental while approaching an issue? Now, these are very, very important conversations, and importantly, academic institutions can be fertile ground in driving equality and taking up these issues. It is, in fact, my honor today to be in conversation with people who are taking up this issue within academic institutions as well as within the corporate sphere. I would like to welcome Professor Hema Datte, the Dean of Student Affairs at NITIE Mumbai. Virendra Sharma, Associate Vice President and Head Supply Chain of Jockey India. Lubena Shapurwala, the co-founder of Mustang Enterprises as well as the chairperson of FICCI Flow Mumbai. And Sonali Rao Chaudhary, Vice President HR of Supply Chain, Labor Relations, APAC, Middle East, Africa and Singapore at Procter & Gamble. Great. So we do have everybody here. Welcome, and I hope you have been listening in to the summit so far. I would like to begin with laying out the context. While there is a lot more awareness, gender bias still exists in our academic environment, and we all have seen it, we've heard about it, we've spoken about it. Now, to all our guests out here who are from both academia and industry, what does a gender stereotype really look like in the classroom? Lubena, I'd like to start with you.
Thank you.
So nice to meet everybody. First of all, thank you for having me here, to NITIE, P&G, and the whole at the moment invisible team at NITIE, the director as well. I'm grateful and honored to be here. So the thing is that can I give you my perspective? Is that women as such are supposed to be kind, nurturing, good listeners and good relationship skills that we have. So we end up getting stereotypes and also, wanting to be protected. For men, we think that they're usually courageous and brave and ambitious and, those type of traits. So when you think of that, obviously who gets chosen as the leader is the man. So we put leadership with men and not with women. So when it comes to being more ambitious, and what happens is when a woman starts behaving more ambitious, probably men and women both don't like the idea because we're just not used to it. So I think academia needs to, at this point, NITIE is doing a wonderful job. We're working very closely with them. And I think academia needs to have less ghettoizing of women in terms of courses and include more women in leadership courses which are with men. And I think that conversation is extremely important. I'll give you an example. You'll see that in a class, when a woman is speaking up, it's usually that they're interrupted. And most times a woman student is interrupted, and that is what we have to call out. That is what we have to kind of stop. It's because it's a subconscious bias, and that is where academia comes in. And I think having these conversations, having these sensitizations, and consciously bringing this to the forefront within academia would be very, very helpful.
And I'm going to put the same question to Sonali next. Sonali, typically in a classroom, when we are talking about gender biases, when we are talking about attitudes towards women or young girls, how does it really pan out? How does it look like?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was listening to Lubina and she mentioned that, ambition. I was actually reading an article recently which went and measured, asked women and men some questions on ambition. And if you looked at that data, and this is data from our parts of the world, not US or the Europe, it actually showed that on the questions measuring ambition, women were actually higher. So some of these kind of stereotypes, etc., that we have, I think play out in terms of maybe institutionalized processes that we have in academia, frankly, even in corporate and other institutions around providing access, around dialogue, and therefore leading to stereotypes. I entered the workforce 20 plus years ago. At that time, my background is in science, and my cohort was actually 65% were female. Okay, it was a science course. 2 months later, when I went for an MBA, there were only 14 of us in a class of 130.
Wow.
Okay? Exactly. Wow, right?